Welcome back to the King's Library in the Royal Palace in Stockholm, where we've gathered together this year's Nobel laureates, and we've been hearing about how their groundbreaking discoveries are helping to transform our lives. Now, Bill, we've been talking about the influences on our Nobel laureates in their early life. Now, you had a very unusual education right at the beginning.
It certainly is unusual in the sense that my mother homeschooled me up until, I guess, the age of about 12 or 13. There were no schools in the area where I was brought up. My father was a doctor in
Quebec.
In Quebec, doctor in a remote area of Quebec, which was very busy during the winter time, but not during the summer and the rest of the year. And so my mother, who was a nurse and no particular experience in teaching, decided she was going to homeschool me. And so that's exactly what she did. And what I found was at the end, when I had to go to a private school, that indeed I was up pretty well with the average student.
And you spent a lot of time with lumberjacks too, didn't you, Bill?
Well, that's another aspect of it. I don't want to get into that particularly, because it is true that the people there during the winter were lumberjacks and big, tough gentlemen, which had an effect on me, I guess, when I went to private school, which was, I guess, a situation that I enjoyed tremendously, because I was a bit of a bully in the school, having been with these lumberjacks all my life. I was a pretty tough customer at the age of 12.
That's held in good stead. Yeah. Okay. And George, you?
Well, the one thing that really sticks in my mind is that around the 7th or 8th grade, I somehow got a hold of a booklet put out by Westinghouse, which was written for that level, explaining electronics and atoms and structure. And that was very, very interesting to me. I can still remember some of that booklet. That plus chemistry sets, microscopes, and, well, not being very good at sports, I use these as a matter of enjoyment, actually. I liked it. And
so from an early age, George, you liked the gadgets, didn't you? Hey?
Yes, that and mathematics. I was good, very good at mathematics, and if you're good at something, you tend to do it.
Jack?
I was always interested in science, math, physics, chemistry. My father was an engineer, and he also had an influence, helped build a chemistry lab in the basement. Had a few, dangerous experiments that blew up unintentionally, but still
and
was
another
a great
parental
introduction.
early influence. Now, Ada, I want to ask you, brought up in Israel, you mentioned your poor background earlier on in the program, and your father died when you were quite young. And
yeah, about 11.
About 11.
And until then, he was almost all the time ill, either in hospital or just out of the hospital.
You had a tough time growing up.
Had an operation or out of operation.
Right. And you did loads of jobs, cleaning and God knows what.
When he was alive, the life conditions were not so great. We had an apartment. We were living in an apartment of 4 rooms, 3 families with 4 kids all together, 1 toilet, 1 kitchen. So it wasn't such a great, rich environment.
It was as you said, a slightly...
And when he died, she hardly could get on. She tried very hard. She was a wonderful mother.
All right.
With much, much less experience than your mother. She didn't even teach me. I had to teach her what percentage is, because her education was very
You had this tremendous curiosity, didn't you, Ada? I mean, tell me about, because you started quite early on carrying out experiments, didn't you?
Yeah, but as a kid.
As a kid, why not? Tell us about one. There was one particularly dangerous one I know about.
There is the one that I still didn't finish.
Which is that?
Measuring the height from the floor to the ceiling of the balcony.
What did you do?
I put furniture one on top of the other, table and chair and a stool and whatever.
How old were you?
About 5, maybe a bit less. I was still in kindergarten, and the kindergarten was downstairs. We were on the 2nd floor, And I climbed, and tried to reach the ceiling with my hand because I still didn't reach it with all the furniture. And then I fell down to the ground floor. And I broke my arm in 11 places. And it was casted, but not correctly, so they had to break it again.
Oh my goodness, so that didn't put you off science for life, clearly.
No, I'm very surprised about it.
Okay, and give us a book quickly.
And now I came back, and I tried, 2 weeks ago, I tried to measure it correctly, so at least I have
all these years later to get the answer.
Yeah, but they changed the ceiling.
And what about a book?
The ceiling is in a different height.
You'll never know the answer. One book quickly.
When I was a child, the first one that I read about science was called Discoverer of the World. The Hebrew name was Megalei Olam. It was not geography. It was Madame Curie and Röntgen and several others. And this influenced me.
Marie Curie, the first woman, of course, who was ever awarded a Nobel Prize.
Yeah, but not because of it.
No.
Because of everything else in her life. And the prize did not change much, but added a lot.
That's true. And Eleanor, you again mentioned your modest background. Has that in any way helped fashion your kind of intellectual thoughts? You're very much sort of talking about joint ownership and the the abilities of a community to know what's best for it.
Yeah, but I did not have many books around as a kid, and neither of my parents had gone to college, so I spent a lot of time in the garden, and I spent a lot of time canning in the kitchen. In high school, I was kept out of math because I was a girl. And so I had to take calculus as an assistant professor rather than...
Isn't that shocking, though, that you had to put up with such sexism?
Yeah. Well, it's over now, thank goodness. I don't think that would happen today. But
no, I mean, look at all these female Nobel laureates. I mean, 4 of you. Terrific. I just want to throw out 1 or 2 questions now. I want to ask something different rather than about women in science, which is... I want to ask you what you think. If we were having this conversation in a century's time, because I know that practically all of you are from North America, do you think that if we had this conversation in a century's time, that the table would look like this? Thank you.
Well, you have to remember that before World War II, Europe dominated science. And the shift went to America after the war. Now, if you look at Japan, Japan's economy started taking off in the 1960s. And you can see that from 20 years later, they're winning an increasing number of Nobel Prizes in Japan. And my prediction is that as the economy of China and Southeast Asia, as those economies become dominant or grow, there will be increasing support for basic science. You already see that in Singapore and in China.
Does everybody agree with that? That perhaps Nobel Prize laureates in the future are going to kind of follow the money, and that money is moving eastwards? Because we all know that in this economic downturn.
Well, it's not only the money, but all of us have coming into our laboratories students and postdocs from Asia, particularly China, but also India, and they're very well trained.
But the students
and they're
coming
very
to
interested.
You. The students coming to you at the moment. Will those labs be in
Asia? But they will go home.
They go home.
And will those labs in future be in Asia?
Well, if you
Yes,
look today at
so.
China,
Everywhere.
if you look at China today, you see that I think they started like something like 20,000 colleges and universities within the last decade. It's a world that is above and beyond us. But to say that the money is going and we are going after the money is a little bit, in my opinion, too strong.
Okay, but you all agree that in the future this table will not be...
I can tell you on a personal note, when I came to the U.S., very few Indians would go back to India. That's not true today. Many Indians are going back.
You wanted to come in briefly on this, Jack?
I think it'll be more